Chapter 1. The clock struck 12:30 p.m. as the many folks of the small city of Fayetteville, Georgia, all off to do their usual routines. Whether it was work, school, parenting, or many other things, everyone had a purpose. Yes, it was a normal afternoon in Fayetteville. Ordinary, you could say. However, that exactly wasn't always the greatest, especially for a certain someone.
Damn it! What kind of a trash compactor doesn't compact anything?
A young male cried in pure annoyance. As most know, a trash compactor is used to crush and dispose of trash. Unfortunately, it was only really good for boxes and things of that nature, rather than a full-blown couch. Casting his eyes to the time clock, 12:30 p.m. registered, which brought a longing to leave this damn place. Mowing the lawn, doing anything else but slaving away for peanuts would have been a better choice. He would gut-punch his younger self for praying for the day of getting out of school, becoming an adult, and getting a job. What the hell was he thinking?
I told him this thing wasn't gonna handle this couch, but no. Why should anyone listen to the stupid newbie? Maybe because a newbie actually knows what to do?
He internally screamed as he sighed. Pausing to listen to the groaning of the overworked machine, Cole leaned his 5'8", 125-pound frame on the wall. He scratched his curly black hair in thought of how to fix someone else's mess. He tapped his finger on his jean leg. Maneuvering his face, he caught his grey glasses before they slipped further down the bridge of his nose. Working at Home Goods was becoming of a problem than it was worth, but at 21 years old, his ass had to work.
Get it together, Cole. You can fix this. Just gotta smack it a few times,
he mumbled as he grabbed a long and thick piece of lumber. He slowly pushed the far end into the compactor entrance and slammed it against the couch, hoping it would push it further in. To his surprise and slight horror, it didn't move an inch.
Well, shit, never mind then.
He huffed and tossed the lumber to the side, leaning it against the wall.
To hell with this, I'm going to lunch.
And with that, he headed towards the back room's exit, en route to the break room to retrieve his lunch. Well, in truth, he was mostly dodging and sneaking to the back room. One thing about working at Home Goods is that, no matter what you do, there's always going to be someone who tries to pull you into work, most of which is one of the managers of the chain. Fortunately for him, getting around folks silently was rather simple. As soon as he stepped into the break room, he reached into the fridge and grabbed his admittedly old Japanese-styled bento box, along with his bottle of fruit punch.
Finally, some food. I swear I should get a raise for how long I stay back from lunch.
He mumbled as he headed out to the front of the store. Usually he'd opt to just eat in the break room, but after dealing with slightly annoying co-workers, a trash compact that wouldn't work, and one customer who was constantly asking for rugs to be taken down just to be put back up again, which on its own was a daunting task, the last thing he wanted was to be anywhere near that store. With a deep breath of fresh air in his lungs, he sat on one of the chairs on display in front of the store as he opened up his lunch. The sweet, delicious smell of buttered rice and fried chicken graced his nostrils, his mouth watering with delight.
Hell yeah, finally some lunch. Come to Papa.
Cole cheered as he raised his filled fork to his mouth. Yes, nothing could stop him from enjoying his perfect lunch.
Excuse me, sir.
Well, maybe not nothing. His eyes looked up from his plate as he slipped the fork into his mouth. Just in front of him seemed to be an older man around his 40s. He was a tall one, being around 5'11", with pale skin, rust-coloured hair, and a build around the same as Cole's. His ensemble of a formal grey suit completed with a dark red tie and black dress shoes really added to his look of all business. Which, that only begged the question. What the hell was he doing at a Home Goods furniture store? The mildly disgruntled employee groaned silently and swallowed his food before answering.
Hi, welcome to Home Goods. Can I help you, sir?
Actually, you can. I'm in need of some assistance with a chair I bought just now. I'd move it into my car, but as you can see, I'm not as spry as I used to be.
He chuckled, his low voice rumbling within his throat.
Not as spry. This dude doesn't look that old. Either he's got an injury or he's just a lazy one.
Cole thought as he shrugged his shoulders. Now, in this situation, Cole had two options. He could either do what all of his other employees do and tell him to find someone else who can help him, since he was on lunch break, or he can cut his break short and help him out. The latter is usually what he chose, albeit begrudgingly.
All right, I'm here to help. Do you have a receipt as confirmation of your purchase?
He asked, as he closed his lunchbox and placed it on the table. The man nodded in response, his hand pulling out a small receipt from his coat pocket. Not much to Cole's surprise, it was legit. Same date, a reasonable time, and a chair that they usually had in stock were all present on it.
The chair is just over by my car. Please, follow me if you will.
The man soon began to step towards his car. Fortunately, it was pulled up just in front of the store's entrance, where the chair also was found on a bright red flatbed. Cole only stared, not just because of the fact that everything was just left there, but because of how expensive-looking the car was.
Holy shit, that's a Ferrari 335S Spider Scagaletti. Those things are one of the most expensive cars to date. Who the hell is this guy? What is he doing in Fayetteville?
Within a few moments, Cole had already begun to slide the chair within the back seat. Luckily, it was easy, thanks to the fact that he could hold the chair closed. With a huff, he stretched his limbs in relief and backed away from the pricey vehicle, closing the door gently.
There you are, sir. Your chair is now packed and ready to be taken, wherever you're going.
He mumbled, his eyes looking the elder man over once again. He smiled, a small chuckle leaving his lips.
Very good. I was worried I wouldn't be able to get anyone to help.
His hand slowly raised up and rested on Cole's head, ruffling his hair.
There should be way more hard workers like you, kiddo.
Okay, this guy is touching me. That tears it. He's a weirdo.
With an awkward smile and a quick step to the side, he pulled himself from the man's hand. One thing that he hated was being touched by folks he didn't know, especially ones that had that pull-you-into-a white van energy.
Thanks for the kind words, sir. Anyways, I gotta get going. I still have a job to do. Please, have a good day,
he said, as he slowly began to walk back to the front of the store. The elderly man nodded his head, his hand giving him a wave.
Of course. You be safe now, you hear?
With a nod of his head, he stepped away from the overly chipper man and started back towards the building, his hands hidden within his pockets. He made sure not to look back, in fear that the elder would ask him for anything else.
Dude really needs to know the meaning of don't touch random strangers. Well, whatever. I'm sure he's mostly harmless.
He thought, his hand scratching under his chin.
Now, to get back to my lunch.
Hey dude, you want a cola?
Cole's eyes looked up from his phone, his eyebrow raised in intrigue. After all the work he had to finish up, a carbonated beverage sounded tempting as hell. With a shrug, he nodded his head in acceptance.
Sure, toss it here.
The male in question did just that, to which he would catch it in his dominant hand with ease. Popping it open, he sighed in absolute bliss. The smell of the beverage, the soft hiss of the bubbling fizz, it made his heart swoon with excitement.
Nice work out there, man. I didn't think anyone could get that couch down into the compactor.
The young man spoke as he brushed his light brown hair from his eyes. The man in question was named Aaron, who was Cole's co-worker. His skin was a pale cream colour, with brown eyes and a bit of stubble on his chin.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. To be honest, I'd rather be good at something else. Like, maybe stock exchanging?
Aaron raised an eyebrow.
You do know that you have to constantly be watching the stock market for that, right?
Yeah, so?
You get bored of it way too easy. Knowing how you'd get up to do whatever for a few hours, then come back and see all your stocks have hit rock bottom.
Cole smiled awkwardly. As much as he wanted to, he couldn't deny that. With how he was, he'd only give it a few days, get bored out of his mind, then move on to something else. That whole money-making skill worked for some people, but knowing his luck, it'd be more of a money waster than a money maker.
Okay, that's fair. Can't argue with that logic.
He mumbled with a silent shrug. He took a nice swig of his drink, a small smile on his face. As usual, the taste of cola instantly brightened his spirits, though it was still unhealthy.
Oh, hey, little tangent from that, but have you heard about that whole kidnapping issue?
Huh? Kidnapping? What, like a Slender Man type thing?
Cole questioned, his finger tapping at his chin. Aaron scoffed.
No, not that one. Same vibes, but not exactly. Here, look at this.
He swiped at his phone and showed it to the bespectacled male.
It just got posted the other day.
His eyes travelled up and down the screen, his lips curled in a quizzical frown. On it was an article, one about what seemed to be about a dark, suspicious van. Silently, Cole read the article to himself.
Another person missing. Authorities have been warned of another kidnapping taking place behind the nearby Walmart in Peachtree City, with no evidence of the assault. Reports show that none of the cameras were operational, and any that were still working had all data scrubbed from their database.
He blinked, not exactly knowing what to say.
Wait, how's that possible? It's not like they have access to those things, right?
Not that I know of. Maybe they hacked them or something, I don't know. Regardless, this is getting serious, man. I mean, I seriously don't want to go out and get fucking nabbed by someone.
He scratched the back of his head.
Who knows what they do? Organ selling, sex trafficking? Hell, even used as a punching bag. Could be anything.
Cole looked down at the table, frowning in thought. It was true, of course. He knew about the kidnappings and the many people that were attacked. Every single person that was taken was never seen again. The police, as great as they were, still weren't able to find anything out about the culprits. Thanks to that, the whole town of Peachtree and Fayetteville was in a huge panic. There was even talk about putting a huge curfew for the entirety of Georgia, but of course the usual bunch of idiots all banded together to bitch and moan over it. So, it never went through.
I understand what you mean, dude. Something like that is just scary.
He mumbled, shaking his head. He stood to his feet, tossing the empty can into the recycling bin. Aaron could only nod in agreement, huffing silently. Fear was something both of them were feeling, along with everyone else who knew about this situation. To be taken by people that smart was the definition of frightening. The day went by rather quickly, fortunately for him. His walk home was uneventful as well, though he was a bit miffed that his mother couldn't pick him up, mostly due to his entire family being down in Florida for the week. Either they were able to take off or their work could be taken on the road. Qualms of working a low-income, shitty job.
I'm home, I say to basically no one.
He mumbled as he closed the door and locked it behind him. Of course, no one would answer him. He huffed, tossing his bag onto the dining room table.
It's just for a couple of days, Cole. They'll be back soon.
He stretched his limbs, his legs carrying him to the bathroom.
For now, I think it's time for me to wash all this filth on me.
Flicking on the lights, he leaned into the tiled shower and turned the knob, the water flowing and warming up in seconds. A nice shower was always the way to relieve him of stress. However, it was also an easy way for him to start reflecting on his life. At that point, he would quickly jump out. Last thing he needed was to be in a mood. Didn't do any good for anyone. After taking his shower, he pulled on his new set of clothes. He shut the water off and headed into his room, the door left open. Usually, he'd shut it, but with him being alone, he felt way better keeping it open.
Another day done, only for another one to begin in a few hours. How great!
He cheered mockingly as he plopped down into his bed. His voice echoed off the walls as he closed his eyes, his hands resting on his stomach. He sighed, his ears filled with nothing but the faint breeze of the AC. At this point, his younger siblings would be screaming and carrying on, and his mother and father would be doing their best to keep them calm. In truth, he missed them a lot. Suddenly, his phone began to vibrate, the sweet melody of the song Singing Telegram invading his space. He jumped in shock, not exactly expecting something like that. He grabbed his phone quickly and stared at the screen. To his annoyance, the number wasn't one he was hoping to see.
Another fucking scammer, I bet. Ignore.
He huffed, his finger swiping at the screen, hanging up. Before he could even toss his phone away, it called again. His brows furrowed from the number returning once again. As he always did, he hung up. 5 seconds later, the phone went off again with the exact same number appearing.
Who the hell is calling me?
With a deep growl of annoyance, he hesitantly answered the phone.
Hello? Who is this?
His answer was met with silence. No one spoke a word between him and the mystery caller.
Hello? Anyone there?
Once again, nothing was spoken. The only thing he could hear was the slight sound of air. With a shake of his head, he swiped the screen, hanging up once again.
Seriously, I don't have time for this.
He jumped, his phone going off again. Yes, it was the same number again.
What the absolute fuck?
Once again, he answered the phone, glaring in rage.
Hello? Who is this? Are you gonna answer or not?
This time, he would be answered, but not by anyone on the phone. Suddenly, the bone-chilling sound of shattering glass jolted him off the bed and to his feet, his eyes wide in shock. From the sound of it, the sound came from the living room just down the hall. Normally this wouldn't be a big deal, but this was different. He was the only one in the house, meaning if he didn't break anything, then who did?
What the hell?
With shaky legs, he walked out of the room, the beating of his heart skyrocketing. Depending on what was out there, it could be normal or something much more sinister. As soon as he stepped into the room, he looked towards the ground. Glass was everywhere, littering the rug and the wood flooring. The usual breeze was stronger and colder, and the sound of nightly crickets were louder. That could only mean one thing. With laboured breathing, his eyes looked towards the front door. It was wide open. The glass from the top of the door was shattered, and the doorknob was ripped off and tossed to the floor. At this point, he had seen enough. To say that he bolted out of there faster than a lightning bolt would be an understatement. He slammed his room door closed and locked it, while turning off the lights, panting silently in fear and panic. Was something in the house? Or maybe it was a person. His hands trembled as he peeked out of the window.
Shit. What's going on?
He looked at his phone, noticing that it was already hung up. Did the caller end the call?
I gotta call someone. The police! They'll help! Just gotta stay silent.
He quickly dialed 911, the sound of ringing soon arriving afterward. It felt like an eternity before his call was taken.
911, what's your emergency?
The female officer spoke calmly.
Hello? Yes, my name is Cole Thortan. My address is 134 Grooms Road, Fayetteville, Georgia. Someone is in my house right now. They broke my front doorknob clean off, and I need some assistance,
He answered, his voice hushed.
Okay, Cole, please remain calm. Are you safe?
I am for now. I locked myself in my room, and I'm right now keeping myself from being spotted. The lights are off, and I'm hidden as best as I can.
The sound of a clicking keyboard was heard, before she spoke again.
All right, we've got someone on the way. Please remain hidden and we will be there right away.
With a nod, he hung up the phone and backed up into the back of his room. His body was practically screaming, urging him to scream in terror. Of course, that was a stupid idea. He may not have been the smartest person, but even he knew that doing something like that would be hazardous to his health. He took a deep breath in an attempt to calm himself down. Panicking wasn't the best thing to do. He had to keep calm.
Okay, chill. Everything is gonna be alright. I just gotta keep my head on straight and stay hidden. The police will be here.
In what seemed like a flash, the glass window in his room shattered, followed by the sound of a thump. His head whipped to the broken window, then to the ground, where the mystery item laid. It was metal and cylindrical, almost like a typical spray can. With a raised eyebrow, he leaned forward slightly, his guard raised to ungodly levels.
The fuck is that thing?
The seconds passed, nothing but his breathing audible in the room. Suddenly, the canister broke open with an ear-splitting screech. His hands gripped at his ears. The sound was practically deafening to him, but that wasn't even half of it. Soon, a dark cloud rose, enveloping the already dark room. At this point, he was so close to going into full panic mode. Whoever was doing this was going through all the stops to mess with him. His breathing, once quick, was slowly getting more and more laboured by the second. It felt as if his lungs were getting heavy, and his eyes were blurring.
What's going on? Why can't I breathe?
He thought, whilst coughing violently. His body swayed, and his thoughts slowed to a crawl. The cloud wasn't just some random mist, it was sleeping gas.
Shit! Stay awake! Stay awake!
He mumbled. It was already too late. He had inhaled it too much, and with his pumping blood and adrenaline, it only made it course through his body faster. With nothing left, his body slowly toppled and thumped to the ground. Whatever was going on was beyond his control and was nothing less than a nightmare. His heart sunk at the realization. He was caught, and soon he would be kidnapped. Chapter 2. Ringing filled his ears, his body screaming in pain. His entire world felt as if it was spinning all around him as his hearing began to return to him.
Ow. What the hell?
He huffed, his eyes slowly opening. The darkness around him soon began to disperse, thanks to his sight getting used to the light around him, or rather, what little there was. His body, lying on what had to be concrete, slowly began to move as he pushed himself off the ground and onto his knees.
Where am I? What is this place?
He mumbled, his eyes glancing over everything that they could. There was nothing but 4 walls of concrete with a door in front of him. It was almost like he was in a high-security prison cell. No, it was worse than that. A prison cell would at least have a bed, a toilet, and a sink. This cell had nothing but a blanket on the floor, where he happened to be sitting now.
Okay, don't freak out. This is a prank. It's gotta be a prank. I mean, I was just talking about guys getting snatched, and now this? Yeah, just a few more minutes and my family will come out and surprise me. Definitely.
Even with him saying that, deep inside he knew what was going on. He was taken, kidnapped, and without anyone who witnessed it.
This ain't a prank, kid.
The sudden voice sent shivers of fear down his spine, his heart pounding against his chest. He looked to his left, then to his right.
Who's there? God?
He cried, his eyes looking up to the ceiling.
The fuck? No, stupid. Look through the bars on the door. I'm over to the right.
Though hesitant, he did as he was told, his knees shaking under him. With each step, his breathing hitched, and his heart would jump. What if someone jumps out? What if it's a Jason situation and someone slices his hand off? He needed that hand, especially his right one. With a deep breath, he slowly looked out of the barred window, his eyes glancing out to his right. To his surprise, a hand waved out to him.
Over here. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. Who are you? What's going on?
Name's Tay, and as for what's going on, I'm as clueless as you. One moment I'm walking home from behind Walmart, and the next I wake up in this goddamn cell. Been here for what I assume is 4 days.
Cole's eyes widened. He remembered Aaron saying something similar to that. Was that man the same as the one on the news?
So, the kidnappers on the news were the ones who took me too? Shit, this is really, really bad. Why the fuck is this happening?
Tay groaned.
Chill out. I can tell you right now that even though this is scary as fuck, you don't have anything to worry about. Well, at least for now, I think.
You think? The hell is that supposed to mean?
Cole cried out, his anxiety going into overdrive. His mind couldn't handle this level of stress. Dealing with his job was enough to make him stressed beyond relief, and now he was in something way worse. It wasn't just because he was kidnapped, but it was the unknown of what he was going to be used for. Tay only huffed.
Look, I can tell you what they're gonna do to you, and it's nothing painful, trust me.
He started, pulling Cole from his woes.
For the past few days, all they've done is pulled me into some room and watched me through a glass. They were having me do some sort of tests.
He finished. Cole's eyes widened in curiosity. What exactly did he mean by tests? The first thing that came to mind was a math test, or maybe an eye test. Unfortunately, it was highly unlikely that whoever abducted him was here to perform a physical on him. With curiosity in his voice, he asked,
What kind of tests are you talking about? If they wanted to test my brain power? Like on Ghostbusters with the spoon bending? I ain't no fucking X-Men.
It wasn't anything like that, you moron.
Tay scoffed, with an almost audible eye roll.
They just kept telling me to make this slab of concrete turn on or something.
You mean like a stone talisman? What is this, gauntlet?
Well, it wasn't really a talisman. It was more like a podium, or a pedestal. It was something along those lines.
This wasn't what he was expecting. With every bit of information he was getting, the more confused he became. What was so important about some pedestal? It made no sense for them to kidnap random people from off the street just to get some lump of concrete to work. Not to mention that stone pedestals aren't really supposed to do anything but be decorative.
It's official. This country is fucked.
Cole mumbled, his fingers pinching the bridge of his nose.
Always has been, kid. Always has been.
Sir, we can confirm that the young man has been taken into our custody. He is now in cell B1.
The woman placed a clipboard onto her supervisor's desk, pulling his eyes away from his computer screen and up to her. She was a petite woman in her mid-30s, with blonde hair and pale skin. Her lips were coated in a light pink lip gloss, with a dark purple eyeshadow. She wore a black form-fitting pencil skirt, black heels, a dark orange sweater, black glasses and a long, clean lab coat. He brushed his chin in thought, his back leaning against his office chair. Just as she had stated, the one they were in search of was present in their own makeshift jail cell. His fingers flowed through his rust-coloured hair.
Very good. And has he been injured at all?
He questioned.
No, sir. He's completely unharmed.
He nods in response. As much as it was a hassle getting him there, not to mention finding him in the first place, he still didn't desire for anyone to get hurt. That was the last thing he wanted, even if he was given orders to do so by the higher-ups. With a heavy sigh, he stood to his feet and paced around the room, his hand grasping onto the clipboard.
Subject name, Cole Thortan. Age, 21. Race, biracial. African-American and Asian mix. Subject seems to be fairly normal in terms of health. Could be better with his electrolytes. Other than that, he seems to be normal.
He mumbled as he looked over the records listed on the notes. She frowned, her arms crossed over her chest.
Sir, you know we can't keep doing this. It started off with kidnapping the homeless and people without families. Now we're kidnapping young men who actually have loved ones and friends. This is just unethical, Dr. Murphy.
Dr. Murphy frowned, his eyes glancing back at the woman with an almost sorrowful look.
Unethical, yes. But it is necessary. We aren't in the position to do things the correct way, Miss Monroe.
But sir, we're breaking the law. Sooner or later, the entire country is going to be on high alert. If we get caught, they are not going to help bail us out.
Dr. Murphy shook his head. In his heart, he knew she was right. After all, even if these people said they were under their protection, in truth it was exactly the opposite. For years, he and his assistant, Catherine Monroe, were both underemployed by the United States government, but not by the normal divisions. Of course, there was Area 51 and your Pentagon, but he and his assistant were very much in a different class. At least for now, that is. He sighed before responding to her.
I'm well aware of that. But we have already dug our grave. Right now, the only thing we can do is continue on our way and proceed as planned.
She chewed her bottom lip, her hands balled into fists at her sides in an effort to calm down. Never in her life did she think she would be this deep into something that could either change the world or end with her life being extinguished. Dr. Murphy instantly noticed her change in demeanor, now changing to one of fear and worry.
It'll be okay, Catherine. I know things look bleak, but I think we're on the brink of everything ending in our favor. That boy is our final subject. I can surely tell you that.
She stared, her eyes narrowing in suspicion.
What exactly makes you so sure, Doctor?
He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped, his words interrupted by the sound of a radio walkie-talkie. With a quickened heartbeat and a shaky hand, he answered the call.
This is Dr. Murphy.
Sir, we just got word that she's shown up. From what I heard, she's looking pissed.
The fellow scientist spoke, his voice dripping with worry. He sighed, pursing his lips.
Yes, thank you. Miss Monroe and I will meet her in the testing grounds. Please let her know that.
10-4, sir.
The talkie went silent, and without a moment to lose, he stepped from his chair and jerked on his usual lab coat. He walked out of his office and down the hall, with Ms. Monroe not too far behind him.
You'll soon see, Miss Monroe.
She jumped as he answered her previous question.
That boy is special, I know it. We just need to find out how. Then, we can figure out what our next step is.
She prayed.
I hope so, Dr. Murphy. I truly do hope so.
The trek through the many halls and down the elevators was done in silence. Their minds were riddled with what-ifs and possibilities of the many things that could be said or told. Who they were meeting was someone who they knew was not to be trifled with, especially with what she was capable of. Their thoughts would be put on hold as they stepped towards a pair of reinforced steel doors. With a loud screech and the deafening sound of grinding metal, the doors slid open, allowing them access to the testing grounds. It was large, spaced out, and covered in concrete and metal, almost like a large dome. To the side was a reinforced room with one-way glass, perfect for observation. At the center of the room was the source of all their curiosity, wonder, and even strife. A strange, almost alien structure stood, its height being about waist-high. To many, it almost looks like a pedestal or a podium, with a strange center at the top. The markings glowed a rainbow hue, with a slight hum of energy growing louder the closer one got to it. Dr. Murphy silently stepped closer to the strange structure, his eyes glazed with amazement. This small slab of stone always intrigued him. What secrets did it hold? How was it made? What function did it possess? All these questions and more invaded his mind, but as they say, curiosity always kills the cat. He frowned. His gaze darted back towards Ms. Monroe.
This is finally coming to an end. We're this close to finding the secrets to this thing.
She crossed her arms.
And yet you still haven't told me how. Just how are we going to uncover this thing's secrets?
That is exactly what I want to figure out.
The two jolted ramrod straight. Their eyes homed in on the voice's owner. With echoing clicks of her heels, an older woman around the age of 40 made her way through the open doors. Her pale white skin lightly shined in the room's lights, her dark ebony hair stopping just short of her lower back. She wore a dark black suit, a red undershirt and a black tie, all coming together to match her very tense demeanor. Ms. Monroe swallowed a lump of nervousness, her eyes signaling for Dr. Murphy to answer her question. With a clear of his throat, he greeted the middle-aged woman.
Good evening, Dr. Jean. I didn't see you come in.
Of course you didn't. You always had a knack for showing ignorance to the things blatantly in front of you,
Jean accused as she brushed her hair from her face. Her lips twisted into a scowl.
Now, answer the question. How exactly is that boy going to help us with our research?
Dr. Murphy ground his teeth to settle his nerves and stepped closer to the structure. His fingers brushed against its surface.
As you both know, this thing isn't something that was made by us. Not even Mayan cultures have created something this advanced, nor have there been anyone else who has.
He looked towards the two women.
Many would say that this thing was of an alien origin, which is a possibility. However, We do also know that this structure reacts to us humans.
Dr. Jean walked closer to him. Her eyes glared daggers at the glowing structure.
In what way does it react to us? Is it lethal?
No, not at all. If anything, it almost seems to communicate to us.
That was exactly what Dr. Jean wanted to hear. Something that was different from the usual, "We're still running tests," or "We're close to a breakthrough." Her eyes lit up in intrigue as she walked around the structure.
I'm guessing that the humming it is exuding is it trying to initiate communication, right?
She questioned, to which Dr. Murphy nodded his head.
That's correct. However, we have reason to believe that the humming is slightly different, depending on the ones who are hearing it.
Fishing into his coat, he pulled out a small stack of papers and flipped through them, before reading them out.
Test 1. Giorno di Arolo. A light humming was heard, along with a light melody. Test 3. Clementine Lee. The humming was replaced with a loud ringing. Caused slight pain. Test 6. K. Benny. The humming was much lower, but he heard what could possibly be a voice. He says it was inaudible to him.
Dr. Jean rubbed her chin, more interested now than ever.
I see,
she mumbled.
Do you think that there is a way to tune in to the message it's giving with one of our machines?
We tried using one of our recording devices, as well as tuning in and manipulating the audio, but it doesn't seem to change. We believe that the changes between each person is done through a link to their minds. It would explain why machinery can't pick up the subtle differences, yet our test subjects can.
Ms. Monroe interjected, her shaky hand pushing her glasses up.
So that's why you've been abducting these people. You stated that the most recent find is the one that will give us our breakthrough. Why is that?
Pressed Dr. Jean. Dr. Murphy, knowing this question would come up again, was prepared for it. His hand slipped into his pocket and fished around within it before pulling out a single strand of black hair.
My watch pulled this strand of hair from him by accident. I didn't even notice it until I made my way towards the pedestal. If you bring the strand close to it...
He paused as he slowly raised the strand towards the structure's surface. To their surprise, the strand began to glow the same hue as the markings. It shined a bright rainbow hue that almost blinded the three. Dr. Jean gasped in shock, whilst Ms. Monroe stared in complete awe.
And this hasn't happened before?
Dr. Jean asked quickly. Dr. Murphy shook his head.
No, ma'am. He's the only subject that has made this happen. We even checked to make sure there weren't any hair products that could have made this happen. The hair was completely clean of any.
She slowly began to smile. This was it. This was her big break. With so many things falling into place, and the individual that they had just captured showing signs of promise, this all could be what they needed. All that was left to do was to make some changes, do some tests, and reap in the benefits. She quickly turned to Ms. Monroe.
We need to begin our testing. You, go and get the boy. We haven't a moment to lose.
Ms. Monroe jumped, jolting in surprise.
What? But Dr. Jean, with all due respect, the boy was just taken, and we still haven't...
Miss Monroe.
Dr. Murphy interrupted.
It's fine. Go and retrieve him. We shall explain the situation to him after he is brought for testing.
But Dr. Murphy...
His glare silenced her. For the first time in a while, she saw something in his eyes that was a direct sign of him commanding rather than requesting. With a heavy heart and a sigh, she nodded her head and turned on her heel before starting her trek down the long hallways. Dr. Jean smirked, her hand touching the structure's surface.
Soon, your secrets will be all ours. We may very well be witnesses to something greater than anything the world has ever seen.
How long has it been now?
Cole questioned, his leg bouncing up and down with anxiety. Ty only shook his head before he answered.
For me, 4 days. For you, 2 hours.
Jeez, what the heck are they doing? If they're gonna dissect me, torture me, or any of that shit, at least do it quickly. I'd rather not sit here for hours, waiting for my doom.
As if fate was ending Cole's suffering, the door to his cell opened. The light slightly blinded him. His eyes quickly adjusted, only to be greeted by a blonde woman with glasses. She moved to the side and gestured for him to exit.
Mr. Thortan, if you would please step out of there, we can get started.
She spoke, her voice sultry. He raised an eyebrow, his arms crossed over his chest.
Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm not looking to just go along with any random lady that crosses my path. I want to know where I am and what I'm doing here.
She frowned, her eyes holding an almost guilty feeling. With slow movements, she held out her hand to him, as if she was begging him to follow her.
Please, I will explain everything on the way. Don't make this harder for either of us. I promise you won't be hurt at all, as long as you cooperate.
He swallowed hard. Usually, when a kidnapper says that, it means that there was a chance he could be hurt if the culprit was angry enough. He took a moment to size her up. He was no fool. He knew when he could win in a fight, and with her small frame, he was sure to come out the winner. He would have no problems shoving her down, giving her face a hard backhand before making a run for it. Leaving with her could be his only chance to get the hell out of there. He nodded his head and cautiously stepped closer to her. She smiled at ease that he was trusting her. She gestured to a nearby door.
Thank you, sir. Now, please follow me and I will explain,
she repeated. The two soon began their trek out of the room and down the halls. Cole's eyes glanced and observed everything they could, in an attempt to find any sort of clue as to where he was. To his surprise, even the hallways and rooms were void of any windows or exits. Not even the offices and experiment rooms had a single ray of natural light inside of them. Truth be told, it threw him for a major loop.
Seriously, where are we? Kinda looks like Area 51.
She giggled.
No, nothing like that. We basically do the same thing, but we're a bit different.
She glanced towards him, extending her hand.
First, let me introduce myself. My name is Catherine Monroe. I'm an assistant to the head scientist of this facility. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Cole, with a high level of hesitance, took her hand and shook it.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Cole, though I'm sure you already know that, right?
She nodded as the two continued their walk through the clean halls.
You're correct. We've done our research on you, believe me.
Okay, definitely not creepy at all,
he mumbled, rolling his eyes.
Skipping to the meat and potatoes now, what am I doing here?
She cut her eyes towards him as her smile faded.
Truth be told, Mr. Thortan, we need you. As of right now, we are in the midst of experimenting on an unknown structure that we found months back. We're unsure of what it is or what it's used for, but looking at it, it almost seems to be...
A pedestal, right?
He interrupted, pulling a shocked gasp from her lips. She quickly composed herself.
Yes, that's correct. How exactly did you know that?
Your last guinea pig told me about what you did and had him do. Something about a strange pedestal or something.
She nodded her head before continuing.
Oh, I see. Right, well, we believe that it reacts differently depending on the subject. For example, most people are capable of hearing a slight hum from the structure. However, some people hear more from it, like the sounds of specific letters or even melodies.
Huh. Kinda interesting. Still, what does any of this have to do with me?
Well, sir, we believe that you may be able to hear the entirety of the message it's trying to convey. Once we figure it out, we should be able to delve deeper into our research and experimentation.
Then I'll be able to go home, right?
Cole questioned. She hesitated for a second before answering him.
That is what we're shooting for. As long as you cooperate, that will be the end result.
Something about that didn't sit quite right with him. Not only was that not a definite answer, but it almost insinuated that if he made a mistake, or if he was unable to perform, then trouble would be in store for him. He swallowed a lump of nervousness as he continued to follow Ms. Monroe. Whatever was going to happen to him, he needed to make sure that he didn't fuck things up. After what felt like hours of walking, though it was merely minutes, they found themselves at their destination. The large dome-like room towered over the two, a sign that, wherever they were, wasn't just some small office building. Cole's eyes widened and his jaw dropped.
Holy shit. This is way bigger than I thought this place was. Looks like fucking Shadow Moses or something.
he thought, as Ms. Monroe ushered him further into the room.
Fuck, this room is perfect for an execution type of shit. Are those turrets up there or cameras? Okay, cool. Gotta stay calm. Can't lose my shit here. Stay calm, collected, and attentive.
As the two stepped forth, his eyes took notice of two more people. One was an older man, about middle-aged, with rust-coloured hair, and a middle-aged woman with flowing jet-black hair. His eyes widened in shock at the sight of the man, his memories flowing back to him.
Hold up! Wait a minute! I know you! You're the guy from earlier, the one who wanted that stupid chair!
He screamed, his finger pointed straight at Dr. Murphy. He merely cleared his throat, a slight bit embarrassed. Cole's eyes glanced toward the woman beside him.
And who the hell is this chick? Why does she give me divorced with 3 kids vibes?
Ah, yes, his defense mechanism. The best way he kept calm was to make a joke or two. Sometimes it was more of an insult, and most of the time he would only say it mentally, but at this point, the only way to keep his cool was to actually let his jab escape his lips. It worked for the most part, but who could really say at this point? Dr. Jean blinked silently before responding,
Your call, I presume. Excellent. Then we can begin.
Her heels clicked against the floor as she and Dr. Murphy headed towards the safe room, with Ms. Monroe following after them. As the door clicked shut behind them, Cole could only watch in puzzlement. Before he could even ask what was going on, the sound of speakers filled the room.
All right, we're clear for testing, Mr. Cole. Has Miss Monroe caught you up to speed on the situation?
The man asked. Cole rolled his eyes.
All I know is that you have this weird pedestal thing that you want me to mess with. I'm guessing that's it over there, right?
He pointed to the structure before him, the lights and hues leaking from its markings. To him, it looked almost hypnotic. The lights, the patterns, the hums and sounds it let out, it all just seemed like some sort of symphony, followed by a light show.
Yes, that is correct. We need you to listen to any of the sounds that it may let out, whether it is a letter or word or even a melody. It is all helpful.
Okay, so how do I do that?
Cole asked, his arms crossed over his chest. His instructions were explained slightly, but they skipped on the part where they told him how to achieve this mission of his, which is usually the most annoying part of the whole secret organization shtick.
Whatever you need to. Touch it, stare at it, close your eyes, anything that helps you concentrate on the noise.
The man rambled off.
Sure. Right, that's helpful.
There was no use complaining now. He had to crack the code, or at least give these assholes something to make them jump for joy. There had to be some way to complete his mission. Whether it was linking his psyche, putting his ear up to its surface, or just talking to it, he had to do something. With a deep breath, he stared at the structure and headed closer to it, his heart pounding against his ribcage.
Okay, hey there, weird concrete thingy. How's it going? So I heard about you having some sort of message for us? You maybe want to give it to me?
He asked, albeit hesitantly. Anyone would be hesitant to talk to an inanimate object. He raised an eyebrow, his body standing mere inches away from it.
What the fuck am I doing? It's not gonna talk back to me, so why should I ask it questions?
He knocked his knuckle on the surface, his eyebrow raised in curiosity.
Dude, I can't hear anything!
He groaned. His eyes glanced towards the safe room to his side.
Just keep trying. When this is all over, you can then return home, remember?
A female voice promised.
I know that, but how the hell am I—
They're lying.
Cole stopped in his tracks. His heart stopped for a split second. Did someone say something? It didn't come from the speakers around the room, that's for sure. He slowly looked down at the structure, his hand brushing against its surface. He couldn't explain it, but it almost felt like his hand was vibrating. His palm and fingertips were warm and almost drawn to the center of the pedestal.
You're in grave danger here.
Who the hell is this?
Cole mumbled, as he stared down at the pedestal, his breathing picking up. Suddenly his eyes flashed with a blinding light, and the room grew almost silent around him. Not even the sound of air invades his ears. That's when, out of nowhere, voices filled his head.
Dr. Jean, what will we do when this is over?
Dr. Murphy's voice filled his ears as if he was listening to a recording.
What do you mean? Obviously, we take what we know and we dig deeper into this thing's uses.
I mean the prisoners, Doctor. What will become of them?
Dr. Murphy questioned, his voice holding fear and worry. Dr. Jean only scoffed at him.
Dr. Murphy, I'm sure I don't have to explain to you that these prisoners cannot be allowed to roam free. Not after all this.
Cole gasped, his body trembling. Whatever she meant by that, he knew damn well that it wasn't anything good.
But, Dr. Jean, these are innocent people. We can't just let them all die.
They can either stay here quietly, or they can be disposed of. Regardless, we must do whatever is necessary for our country's survival and growth. Just like a soldier, they give their lives to help our home, and so will they.
He couldn't believe it. They had lied to him, right to his face. They never meant to let them go at all. Hell, they were even going to kill him if necessary. This wasn't right. None of this was right. He needed to get out of there somehow. The sound soon returned around the room, apparent by the speaker's loud blaring of Dr. Jean's voice.
Hello? Respond. What is going on over there?
He didn't answer. If he did, there would be no way for him to escape. This was his one and only chance that he had. His heart pounded, sweat began to bead on his forehead, and his eyes glanced everywhere for some sort of exit. To his fear, there wasn't any other way out.
Fuck. What do I do? How do I get out of here?
Aromecia.
He jolted in place, his eyes staring back at the pedestal. Did it speak to him again?
Utter this name, and your safety will be assured.
The name? What are you talking about?
He mumbled silently. His eyebrows furrowed in confusion. His fingers pressed further on the pedestal's surface.
Mr. Thortan, what's going on? Please, back away from the structure and let us take you somewhere to be checked out.
Dr. Murphy demanded through the speakers. Cole shook his head, his free hand clenched. He had to do something, and if this thing was telling him what to do, then God damn it, he was going to do it.
Not today, liar.
He took a deep breath, and with an airy tone he whispered,
Aromecia.
Deep inside, a part of him knew this wasn't going to work. After all, there was no way that a single word was all it took for him to just be taken away and placed in a safe place. It was unethical, illogical, and just impossible. Fortunately, he was very, very wrong. The air around him grew warmer, and his whole body tingled. As the pedestal's glow grew brighter, the entire room echoed with the sound of an almost mystical hum. Electricity flared about left and right, striking at the ground and walls, scorching the poor concrete. Cole only stared, his body frozen in shock. Thunder rumbled from within the room, the ground shaking beneath his feet. Even the sound of the safe room door flying opening was overshadowed by the structure's sounds of rage and liberty. Dr. Murphy was among the first to step out, his body quaking with fear.
What is this? What's happening?
He screamed, his arm held above his face to shield his eyes from the lights and wind. Dr. Jean, too mesmerized to even try and keep herself safe, slowly trudged closer to Dr. Murphy, a smile creeping on her face. Ms. Monroe quickly pulled out a scanner. Her hand pushed her glasses back on her face.
Scanner indicates high energy level, sir. This is roughly...
She gasped, unable to even finish her sentence.
What? How much energy?
He called, pulling her out of her stupor. Her eyes only widened as the scanner began to let out a loud beep, a warning of just how powerful and dangerous this energy truly was.
Sir, the energy levels have passed 225 million trillion joules. This energy is almost powerful enough to destroy the entire planet.
Dr. Murphy and Dr. Jean's heads snapped towards her. The disbelief in their eyes turned into that of fear and panic. Never in their life did they think that this small hunk of stone could even hold such power. Dr. Murphy quickly looked back at Cole, who looked to be struggling to even stand, let alone move. He was in danger. He knew it.
Mr. Thortan, you need to get away from the structure. It's far too dangerous to be that close to this much energy.
He screamed. His body started towards him. If he could just grab him and pull him away, then there could be a chance to save him. To his fear, Dr. Jean leapt in front of him. Her arm halted his movements.
Don't touch him! We need to see this experiment through!
She screeched, her eyes holding an almost hateful look.
But Dr. Jean, that boy's life is in danger. We overstepped the line with kidnapping, but to just let him die?
Then that's one less loose end to tie up. We've come this close already, and I will not let anyone halt our progress any longer.
He glared daggers at her. His mouth opened to shout another rebuttal. Before he could even get another word out, the structure buzzed, shook, and hummed before shooting a beacon of light straight to the ceiling of the room. Cole's body stiffened as his entire person slowly being enveloped in a layer of rainbow light. He could feel his body growing heavier, yet lighter all at once. His perception of even his own physical status was fuzzy and warped. He couldn't even hear himself think over the complete and utter chaos around him. All he could hear was that same voice. Embrace your future. Do not falter. This is your destiny. With one final flash of colourful light, and the humming slowly silenced. All was still and quiet, so much so that you could hear a mouse pissing on cotton. The walls and floor were covered in scorch marks, and the once cool structure was now steaming. Dr. Murphy quickly sprinted towards the pedestal. His eyes scanned the area for the boy. He was nowhere. Not a single trace of him was left, not even a single shred of his clothing. His heart squeezed with guilt. Was he destroyed? Perhaps killed by the sheer power and energy that was displayed?
Dr. Murphy? Did he?
Ms. Monroe's voice trailed off, unable to even finish her question. He shook his head, unable to even look at her.
What have we done?
He uttered. His shoulders slumped. Unfazed, Dr. Jean only shook her head as she stepped closer to the pedestal.
Such a small monument, yet it holds a limitless power.
She glanced to Dr. Murphy.
Do you see why we must study this? Why we must find the truth in what this was used for and who made this? If something like this could be manufactured by another country, who knows what could happen to our home?
Ms. Monroe bit her lip. All the things she could say to her, yet in the end, she knew it would only fall on deaf ears. That was just the type of woman that their great Dr. Jean was. Cold, bitter, uncaring, and stubborn to a fault. Dr. Murphy glared at her. Hayes' fists clenched with self-loathing and rage.
We just killed an innocent boy, Doctor. We need to tell the truth to his family.
And why would we do that? The news will practically do the work for us.
She held her hands up, waving them about.
Picture it. Young man goes missing. Georgia kidnappers strike again. There's no way they'll tie it to us. Besides, we have the government's full support on this. Well, at least we will, once we get this data to them.
Jean chuckled lowly as she headed for the exit. In truth, she was right. They hadn't been caught at all, let alone had any suspicion on them. They were untouchable at this point. Dr. Murphy sighed as Ms. Monroe placed a hand on his shoulder, comforting him. The future wasn't looking bright for any of them, and unfortunately, the only thing they could do was grin and bear it.